Good evening, everybody. We're on the SACRE committee tonight. My name's Bob Webb. I'm the exec member for Children, Young People and Education and chair of this committee. And just for the interest of everybody who's joining us online, we've got Penny and Sue. Guys, can you hear me? And importantly, can we hear you?
Yes, I can hear you, Sue.
And it's Penny.
Perfect. Yeah, you're coming through loud and clear. That's lovely to know. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. We've had apologies from Joseph Everdell and from Dariush Mazloum, and I just want to share with members that Dariush is unwell at the moment, quite unwell. Penny, I don't know if you wanted to say anything else about that.
Just to say that he has a particular condition that affects his whole nervous system. It does have a name, but I couldn't tell you or pronounce it. But he still remains in intensive care in York Hospital, and we just hope that they can find some way to help him. He's on a ventilator and currently unable to move, so it's quite serious. So yeah, we're just awaiting more information after the family have met with the consultant today to see how they move things forward if they can.
Thank you, Penny, and I know that all our thoughts are with Dariush and his family at this time, because that cannot be easy at all. No, we've decided to start, and just because of time, but we've got Penny and Sue online. I've checked and we are quorate, so we're just moving ahead. So we haven't had apologies from the other people we were expecting online. But I hope they'll join us as soon as they can. Further updates on membership. Ian Hodgson, who was a humanist member from Group A, has unfortunately had to take a step back from the committee due to other commitments. I have reached out to Ian to say thank you for what he's done for this group. And also to ask him to sort of put us in contact with other humanists to arrange someone to take on that role. So we'll see how that goes. Time. Next, we spoke last meeting about Mark Jones, who is a Buddhist, who we were looking to join our merry band. Mark can't attend this meeting, but his intention is to attend the next meeting, I think. The next point is declarations of interest. Does anybody have any to declare? Tremendous. Okay. So I'm going to move us on to the minutes from the previous meeting. Does anyone have any problems with accuracy of those minutes? No. Okay. Oh, and
very, very minor.
You just put your microphone on. Councillor Knight.
It's very minor and I'm being pedantic, but apparently we're meeting in the wet offices in January.
Good to know. Thank you. Just for everyone's benefit, Diane Norton has now joined us in the Zoom meeting. Hello, Diane.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Very loud, very clear.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's good. Just for those people online, I have got a screen in front of me which shows me what you're looking at. So if you do have a question, please just raise your electronic hand and I can see that as well as anyone waving at me in the room. You've not missed much, Diane. We've just been through apologies. We're now on to the minutes of the previous meeting. There was a number of actions from that meeting and I'm just going to run through those. So number one that I picked up was Maxine to arrange a link to the RE hub on the SACRE website. So that's been requested from web services. Excellent. The second one was about the deep and meaningful reports from Ofsted, and I was trying to remember whether that had been circulated
Yes.
or not. Again,
Was circulated. Yeah, was circulated.
thank you, Maxine. Third one was members' feedback on what could be provided between conferences. So we talked about the fact that we were potentially having a conference where you would launch a new syllabus, but actually what could we do in between that? Now, I have to say I haven't had any feedback from members. So I'm raising that one with you now just to take a look at that and think if there's anything in particular we think we could do. And what we might do is come back to that when we talk about the 35 ideas, which was another one to look at. I will run through these. If anyone's got any comments, just put your hand up. An update on the strands of the development plan was mentioned at the last meeting. That is on the agenda. Number 5, members to write a sentence for the website about who we are. Now, I'm going to say that I did this because I'm a goody two-shoes, and Andrew reminded me. I'm seeing some slightly perturbed faces, mainly amongst the councillors. So if members could please send a sentence to Angela, it's probably best coming to yourself. So we can update that on the website. That'd be really good. Next item was about, if you remember rightly, last academic year we hosted, or we went to do 2 primary school visits, which I think were pretty successful, pretty useful for us. We talked about secondary visits, and I was just wondering where we got to about planning and organising that. Maxine, any word on that?
I did speak to Taco about it, and he felt that there wouldn't be a problem in organising one for Joseph Rowntree. So we'll just need to confirm that. I'll also speak to the subject leader at Huntington, because that's the other maintained secondary. And I know she's very proactive always in terms of returning the school survey. So I'm sure she would be quite happy to host a visit as well.
It's good. Is everyone happy with that? I know we did talk briefly about Fulford as well, but I think we've got 2 that we're happy with.
I'm more than happy to contact the head at Fulford.
The reason we talked about it was because of Fishergate, St Oswald's, and that link with
being
Fulford.
being the feeder. Yeah.
I don't know. Has anyone got any other opinions on that?
Yeah.
I've just got a question.
Diane, go for it.
I'm talking quietly. I didn't want to shout.
You're fine. You're absolutely perfect.
I've got a number of contacts, obviously, with the ITE provision that we have. I wonder if Maxine, you want me to contact them and see if they'd be interested.
Yeah, that would be really helpful, Diane. Thank you.
Okay, will do.
Excellent. So that action is in progress, I think, and we can look at that to see what comes from it. But I think we've got stuff there.
Yeah, I'll circulate some dates, some potential dates out. But I'm assuming that you want to stick with the same group of people that did the primary visits.
Yeah, I'm absolutely fine with that. If everyone else is, yeah. Okay. The next action was the report back to Fishergate and St Oswald's about our last visits. I have done that, sent that to them. They were thankful for that report and for our work. The next item was the 35 things to do, activist SACREs. I took a brief look at that document, and I don't know if anybody else did, but there was a few on there that I felt could actually be quite useful in terms of what could we do between, producing syllabi. I think training was one that jumped out to me that would be quite useful. There was an option of or someone talked about a yearly SACRE lecture. I actually thought that's something that if we couldn't do that in York, where could you do something like that? And that could be an ambition that would be relatively easy to achieve. It says relatively easy. And then potentially the other one that jumped out at me was the essay competition. I know, Penny, through your work with Interfaith, you've done sort of competitions before. I don't know if that could be something we could aim for. But I don't know if anyone else had any thoughts about anything in particular they liked or disliked. Just press your button, Taco. The one in the middle looks like a Wi-Fi code. That's it, you're on.
No problem. Yep, sorry, the idea of having a SACRE conference or SACRE lecture sounds really, really beneficial. I think as well, if it was laden with bits and pieces that we previously released, just thinking back to the comments on staff showing interest in materials that were released when the syllabus was first released, sort of saying that we've got information that has been released previously repackaged into a nice handy pack, and then making that accessible either through web links as well, and then having things emailed out would probably be really beneficial, I think.
Just a question for Diane. Obviously, Diane, with your links to the universities, would you be able to reach out for anybody who could do a SACRE lecture?
Yes, I think we maybe need to consider what we wanted the subject to be about.
Yeah, I was just thinking about something, you know, that's linked to you know, what's at the cutting edge in terms of religious education at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, I thought exactly the same myself, Maxine. I was probably going to ask Diane what she felt about this, but something with an RE focus that could engage people in the city, I think could be something to really highlight the work this group does and what RE teachers are doing as well. I'm going to go to Penny because she's got a hand up.
We have, I know someone called James Holt. He's actually a member of my faith, but he's a professor of RE at Chester University, has been a teacher, teaches at the university, sits on exam boards, does all sorts of stuff about RE. So we have had him at Interfaith to speak to us from a learning about religion and curriculum and that kind of stuff. So I throw that as a possibility of perhaps inviting him as a guest speaker. He's always very accommodating and he's very knowledgeable. So you can look him up. So just as something to consider, really.
I think that's something certainly to consider. And as I said, this was just one of the ideas of those that I thought, you know, could be something to promote what we're doing. So if we sort of agree, I'll let Ben in first and then.
Yeah, I was going to just chuck another name into the mix, which is Professor Pauline Colotai, I think is how she says it, who is a Professor Emeritus at York St John, but who's a specialist in relationship between religion, violence and adult education. And I think some of the issues that are coming up in schools around you know, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, dealing with the Middle East, that actually might be quite a useful topic. And I think I've heard her speak, she's very good.
Okay, well, so my next point was going to be potentially, well, it's going to be myself and the vice chair, Ben, and maybe Diane and Penny, if we could maybe arrange to meet briefly in between these meetings and have a chat about what could work. Diane's put a thumbs up. So does that seem reasonable to folks as an action? Lovely, thank you. Okay, we're still on the actions. The next was Youth SACRE, but I think, Councillor Wilson, do you want to say anything about it now? I think it might be something in AOB as well.
Excuse me. Yes, just to say family and life has got in the way of trying to organise an actual youth SACRE, people who might be interested in Interfaith Week. But thanks to Penny and Dee, what we've agreed is that we'll have a SACRE talk during Interfaith Week. So I will host a session on Zoom that will be publicised via Interfaith Week to get people to talk about the work that we do and hopefully about the work that Interfaith do in schools as well. So that's our first starting point, hopefully, towards it.
Thank you. Penny, I know you had an AOB, but I'm going to use my chair's discretion to bring it forward because I know some people have got to go later in the meeting, so I want everyone to hear it. So, Penny, did it link to that, or do you want to say any more on this?
Yes, no, that's great. We've almost finished the draft program for Interfaith Week. So as soon as that's done, I'll send it to Ange and she can circulate it. So this year we're celebrating 35 years of York Interfaith, and we'll be having you, hopefully we'll have all received the invitation. We're having a 35th sort of celebration program to end Interfaith Week, and our theme this year is unity, and that we're all on a journey together, which we thought was very appropriate for where we are at the moment, and for the fact that we're celebrating 35 years of being able to work together and understand each other and work through challenges and difficulties together. So I will send out the programme. Yeah, SACRE is on there, so you'll see that with input from Interfaith. We have an Interfaith meeting this Thursday, so that'll go to the committee. So we're almost there, really. So there's lots of things, and if anyone wants to join into anything in the programme for Interfaith Week, they're very welcome. And the contacts and details will be on the programme.
Thanks, Penny. And yeah, thanks for your work on this one. I know it's a big task, Interfaith Week, but I'm glad we've got people involved in it. And 35 years of working together is impressive. Speaking as a politician, if we could last 5 minutes, we'd be doing well, wouldn't we? Last item on the actions from the previous item was the guidance on collective worship, which is item 6 on this agenda. Whew, there we go. So it's only taken us 20 minutes and we've got through the actions from last meeting. So we move on to item 3 now, which is the analysis of the SACRE annual reports. Maxine, are you introducing this one?
I am, yes, thanks, Chair. So in your pack, you've got the analysis of annual reports, which was written by Dr. David Hampshire on behalf of SACRE, and has also been shared with the Department for Education. Thought it was useful for SACRE to consider this report because obviously we're coming up to the time where we'll be writing the annual report over the next month or so. I think there's some useful analysis in here that's telling us about the state of SACREs nationally, but also some of those things that we may want to reflect on as we're preparing this year's annual report. There are some things that, you know, are common to what we've seen with SACRE in York about quoracy and, you know, sort of about vacancies on SACREs. There are also some pointers around things that SACREs may want to consider in terms of what they'll be producing in their annual reports this year. It is a requirement to write an annual report, but as you can see from this report, by no means all SACREs nationally are producing them and submitting them to the DFE. We always have done. They've also talked about the way in which the context around SACREs have been changing, that it's more and more common now not to have a RE advisor advising SACRE just because of the way that local authorities have been changing over time as well. Some SACREs do have funding, others don't. They also talked about the way in which SACREs, the sort of work that SACREs have been producing over the year. There's a bit of a challenge around the way that SACREs have been monitoring collective worship, and that's one of the things obviously that we do want to look at and incorporate perhaps within those school visits, not to make it a big part of it, but that there is that statutory oversight of collective worship, which is part of the constitution of SACREs. So it is one of those things that needs to be looked at. as we're beginning to approach the review of the agreed syllabus, again, you know, they're pointing out some of the different ways in which that's being interpreted nationally. So quite a few things in here that just to help SACRE reflect on, you know, where you're at as you're beginning to think about that annual report. They do as well talk about SACRE's being clear about advice that they've given to the local authority, and pointing that out in their reports, using their reports as an opportunity to do that. So yeah, I'll just leave it there and open it up for any discussion. I've also included the SACRE template for annual reports, which we have followed over the last couple of years, and intend to follow again this year.
Okay, folks, anybody got any questions or comments about this report? Go on, Ben.
It's just an observation that the issue around vacancies suggests that there's something wrong with SACREs. Actually, it's just not a very attractive thing to do, and it's not well set up. But I suspect it's not for us to point that out to the government. I don't know. But I was in a way quite pleased to discover that if York was having problems where faith is quite an important part of our city, I'm really not surprised that was all.
And I think it's worth reflecting on that there is quite a strong all parliamentary group that continue to support religious education and SACREs. So there is that opportunity within annual reports just to get that message to the Department for Education as well. If SACREs do want to get that across, you know, are there things that you know, you as SACREs might want to suggest as changes, given that this goes right back to the 1944 Education Act. You know, it's one of those things that it is perhaps time to reflect on, particularly because of the changes that have happened in the school landscape since that time.
I mean, a review once every 80 years or so is on religious terms, it's probably quite a short period, really, isn't it? But I think it's interesting, isn't it, Ben? And it is a concern that we struggle to fill vacancies. You know, in touch wood, we've done all right for quoracy over the last few meetings, but it's certainly something that we need to think about how we would feed into that national narrative, because if there's any time to do it, now is the time. What I thought was useful about this document was it's an opportunity to think, what are other people doing compared to us, really, and are we doing more, less, or whatever? And the interesting bit for me was about the advice, because he was thinking about how our SACRE is set up to give advice to the local authority, when in reality, you know, Maxine, you're sat there and sort of in charge of education. I'm sort of sat here with sort of oversight of that. So it is thinking about how that works in other places as well, and how we what kinds of advice, I suppose, we provide. I don't know if, Maxine, you've got any thoughts on what happens in other places, or if there's any evidence of advice we've had to give in the past, for example, here.
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, all local authorities are set up differently, and some of them will still have subject advisors who are providing support around developing curriculum materials in RE. And obviously then SACRE can have a much more active role in advising the local authority about producing some of those resources. Some SACREs will advise the local authority around things that have come through from school surveys, for example, around CPD that teachers are asking for, and, you know, recommending that the local authority actually consider how they commission that CPD to support teachers of RE. So there's those types of things that very definitely are part of the way that they offer advice and support. Some of it as well is you know, sort of the way in which they ask local authorities to consider topics related to religious education in the local area that have come through from anybody who's fed into SACRE about concerns or complaints, you know, those types of things. We're very fortunate in that they rarely come through, but we did a few years ago look at some concerns that came through about collective worship and who was delivering collective worship in schools. So, you know, those types of things are ways in which SACRE can provide advice to local authorities. The statutory role is to provide that advice. I mean, that is what you're here for.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just think it's worth sort of having that in mind, really, because I think, you know, the collective worship thing is certainly something that's come up before. Okay, does anybody else have any thoughts, feelings about item 3? Okay, we'll move on to item 4 then, which is an update on the SACRE development plan. Maxine?
Yes, I think one of the things that we talked about last time with the development plan was to try and turn it into some task and finish work streams.
Just to pause, there isn't a written report on this one.
There isn't, no,
Flicking through,
no, yeah.
thinking you've missed something.
Yeah.
No.
I think as well, because we are at that point where we're going to do this year's annual report, then it's also a good time to start to think about priorities that we haven't moved forward in the development plan and think about whether they remain priorities or we actually want to begin to think about more manageable priorities for the future. And, you know, sort of perhaps have some things that we are definitely going to commit to getting done in the new year and identify the mechanisms for getting those done and be very, very clear about them. So then we're not coming to meetings with, well, we've got a gap between getting certain things done. So I think the development plan, you know, we wrote it in quite an ambitious way around some things, but I think we need to actually, for January, really think about what do we want to do, say, in 3 areas that we're actually going to show that SACRE's had an influence over those. So SACRE has always had a strong relationship, for example, with interfaith. And it may well be that one of the things that SACRE wants to do is really think about what you were saying about, you know, sort of making sure that the role of SACRE within that relationship with interfaith is very, very clearly mapped in the coming year. And it may then lead to, I know what Penny had got an ambition about doing a biannual SACRE interfaith competition that actually got schools hooked up with that. I think there is a need to think about CPD and support for teachers in schools and what we want that to look like. The Maintain School Network have developed now a series of subject groups, one of which is RE. So I think there's some learning from that as well, but also because SACREs have a direct role with Maintain Schools, thinking about whether there are certain things that we can use that particular group for as well around the commissioning of CPD. So, you know, sort of really thinking about how do we get a development plan that we can evaluate and show that it's making a difference in terms of SACRE actually being able to do some work that makes a difference.
Thank you.
Based on the limited resources that it has.
Yes, we should finish every sentence without the council, shouldn't we? Yeah, thank you, Maxine. And I think that myself, Ben and Councillor Rowley, we sat down, looked at the previous development plan and we RAG rated it, didn't we? And I think that process sort of illuminated to me, because I wasn't involved when that was produced, that there was a lot on it and we'd have probably done better by having fewer things. So what's the process then, I suppose, before
I think if yourself and the vice chair actually using that RAG rating, prioritise any actions that are in there to pull it into a smaller plan. And also what we can do is we can have a look at some of the information that will go into the annual report and use that as an opportunity to identify any priorities that have emerged from that, which we can then, as I say, hone the development plan.
Okay.
So I think if the three of us meet between now and January, I think that would be a good way of ensuring that we've done it.
Is everybody content with that process?
And bring that back to the January SACRE meeting for sign off.
Ben, are you content with that? That's fine. That's a lovely thing to do in December.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Penny, you've got thumbs up there. Are you just appreciating us, or have you got something you'd like to add?
No, I'm just agreeing, appreciating.
Thanks, Penny. We like that. It's just nice on the screen. Andy.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the comment of CPD, it's not myself leading that network meeting. A colleague of mine wanted to run that, and absolutely fine. But I can obviously bring up, say, and ask directly within that network meeting, and that will at least give us, can't think of the word, a group of teachers and what direction they're thinking, which we can work from there.
That would
really
be very
helpful.
useful.
So,
Yes.
Helpful.
Yeah. And as we're saying, we're talking about December, so if there's any opportunities to sort of feed something into us.
The network meeting itself is due early November,
see.
so we'll have opportunity then to ask, and then I'll double to do it, and I'll make sure I get that sorted for you.
Spot on. Look at that. It's like we plan these things, isn't it? Well, Maxine plans it all in the background. Okay, anything else on art item? Item 5 it is then. Item 5 is, again, there's no papery bits for this one, so we're on to the school survey.
Yeah, as you probably remember, we did a school survey last year, which had got some set questions that came from a questionnaire which Olivia Hargreaves has used with the RE network in the region. I've been having some thoughts about this, and I don't know whether we should just do this time a very brief pupil voice survey as the school survey, so that we actually get an indication of how pupils in the city are feeling about RE. It builds on the voice work that you did when you were at the Church of the Latter-day Saints. And I think, sort of we could do something that is a bit, as I say, because the full school survey has got 15 questions to it. But if we actually thought about what would be the 5 questions that we would like young people to provide some feedback on, and we do that through the RE Teachers Network, just get them to run that survey with some of their young people. It would give us a bit of a picture of how children and young people are feeling about RE, to go with some of the questions that we've asked them when we've been on the school visits. And that would be a way of getting at that pupil voice and in advance of doing any form of youth SACRE. The other thing that I think it'd be useful to get out of the school survey is just do it about requests for CPD. So just circulate to the heads of RE and the RE subject coordinators what would be their top 3 topics for CPD. And that would then inform what we might want to put together in terms of some commissioned CPD.
Ben?
I can't remember what we asked in the survey last year.
It was lots of things. It's quite a big beast, so it asks about your curriculum structure. It asks about how many hours you're teaching RE. So it's quite a set number of questions. There are 15 in total.
So I don't disagree. Indeed, I like the idea of trying to do something from a student voice point of view. But it seems to me the point of doing a survey on its own was generally fairly pointless unless you use it as a benchmark by repeating the same questions after a period of time. Now, it may not be we care about all of the questions we ask, but I hope we care about at least one or two of the questions might be useful. So it'd be useful to go back and see which ones we want to.
Yeah,
So,
I can
are they
send you-
spending more
yeah.
time, less time preparing?
Yeah, I can send you a copy of it, Ben. Andy, you've replied to it, so it'd be interesting to get your reflections on it.
Yeah, it would just two thoughts. The first is I'm aware we had I can't remember the number, but I don't think it was every school that replied. And I wonder if part of the reason that was is because it did feel quite hefty. And actually in a busy teacher's sort of workload, some teachers may not find time for that. In addition, those staff that did reply to that survey, they are likely the ones who are very, very keen and very proactive with RE. And I would imagine that they will just respond with very similar answers. I know that as a teacher, if I received the same questionnaire, my first instinct would be to go and look at what I wrote last time and to see if there's anything I would need to tweak or change. But predominantly, I would reply with probably very, very similar answers. So I don't know if we'd actually gain any new information by sending out the same survey again. But I do agree that there will be some aspects of the survey. I can't remember what was in it off the top of my head, but there may be some aspects that we do want to sort of track, as you suggest. But for example, hours in which RE is taken.
Yeah, that may be one of the things that we want to just see if there's been any change from the previous year. You know, is it getting squeezed in the curriculum, for example?
Okay, we've got a couple of people online, so I'm going to bring in Diane first, and Sue, I've seen you. So Diane?
Just a question about the survey. Would it be appropriate to ask some questions regarding their knowledge of SACRE and what they think SACRE is here for and how SACRE can help them, along with the questions about what sort of CPD would they like? Because I think there's a lot of people out there who don't actually know what SACRE is here for.
I'd agree, Diane. Yeah, I'm more than happy to add in a question about that. You know, sort of, do you actually know what SACRE is? Yeah.
I assume we're talking about the teachers there and not the children.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Otherwise, I know what the answer is. Sue?
Yeah, actually, I agree with a lot of what Diane said there. I think, firstly, the survey was quite onerous for busy teachers to fill in. And, you know, I know they did it because they are trying to be really proactive. But if we could just choose those questions that really we're going to focus on, and it might tie in with something to do with the development plan, but just maybe keeping some questions the same so that you have got that ability to track responses, but just focusing on a couple of things. And then I really liked Maxine's idea of asking, what are the things that we can do for you? Would you like? Because that's where the profile of SACRE will start to sort of increase in head teachers' awareness, that once you're giving something back, it's like, all right, okay, this is an organisation that's actually here to help me. Because I do agree, I think that most schools don't really know what the purpose of SACRE is.
Thank you, Sue. Andy, you look poised.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I thought on our last survey, did we feed back to schools on what we'd found? Did we publicise that?
Yeah, we did have a report, obviously, which is published as part of the SACRE papers. So, yeah, it went out.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say, I really like the idea of the pupil voice and gathering that and building on what we've already done. I do note that one of the things that was pulled out in the analysis of the SACRE reports is that lots of reports mention having pupil voice, but not really what the point of it is. Yeah. So I think we'd need to be quite careful that our wanting to know what we're asking and why. So being quite careful that it's useful for us to find the pupil voice rather than just telling us their experience of RE. It's suggesting that you might want to delve a bit deeper than that.
Yeah, I think my view on it is, as I see Ben's point, actually, that we're going to do a survey, doing it consistently is quite useful. Actually having the input, you know, we're here to support RE teachers, really, is sort of my view. So actually having that benchmark consistency is quite useful. So potentially if we can look at the, say, what was it, 15 questions and look at the ones that we think are good for benchmarking out of that 15 and condense that down a little bit. I really like the adding in about the CPD. What are the top 3 things you think you would want to be able to teach better, to learn about more, something like that. And then I think that the children's part of this, my view would be that it then corresponds to that CPD. What is it that you feel you want to learn more about? And I know from our school visits, that was something that came up in both school visits, was young people saying, we really want to learn more about X, Y, or Z. It was often different religions to their own, or something that, or for example, when we had the event where young people came to us, the one thing they talked about was actually the best bit of RE being the discussions. So, you know, if we found that that is consistently something that people are saying, young people are saying, and RE teachers are saying, actually, how do we talk about other faiths and how do we have discussions? Then great, we've got something in common there, haven't we? So that would be my thought on it. Anybody else have anything else, Andy?
Sorry, just on the pupil voice, just thinking again from the perspective of an RE teacher, having fewer questions so it's easy to manage, but equally also thinking about which children I would pick. And I'd get the ones who are happy to talk on RE, because I know that they would give me some good vision of and give me a lot that I can write and feedback. In that respect, then, if other teachers would follow the same practice, it may be beneficial to have questions such as, what has been your favourite moment in RE? What things do you, what 3 things do you, what were 3 of your best RE lessons? And what that would do is they would come back with, when Ben came in and we saw the Torah scroll, because the visitors no doubt will be on it. And then when we talked about lessons, for example, or when we had a debate and a discussion, or when we went to the mosque, or when it would highlight not just the practice in those schools and what they're doing, but also which pieces of practice are having the most meaningful impact, because they've come to the forefront of their mind and it's easy for them to recall. Sorry, Ben, to use you as an example there.
Okay. Maxine, do you feel you've got enough to go on there?
Yeah.
So what's the mechanism here? Do you feel you bring something back to us? Or?
I send out to SACRE members via Ange questions that we used last time, and also a suggestion about how we slim it down. Because I'd quite like to get it out in the next few weeks, so that we can have it back, you know, sort of towards the end of November.
That's fine by me. Andy, maybe something to add to your list to tell other RE teachers about, to expect and to think about. Okay, any more on item 5? Item 6, here we go. Collective worship guidance. Now this is in your packs. Item 6 starts on page 41.
The current collective worship, the current guidance on to schools on collective worship was actually put together in 2017. So it's quite a while ago now. I'm not saying that everything's completely out of date in it, but it's just an opportunity for SACRE members to revisit it, to you know, sort of spend some time thinking about are there any areas of it that you would like to focus on and refresh. It was previously looked at when Olivia Hargreaves was working with SACRE, so it will be, you know, sort of compliant from Olivia's point of view, being a diocesan advisor. But yeah, if there's anything that you feel it would be useful for us to revise in this or just update in it, and also to relaunch it with schools, because I should imagine quite a few schools have actually lost sight on the fact that it even exists. And I'm looking at Andy here, quite deliberately on that one.
It isn't something that we have spoken much in network meetings. A lot of the conversations that we have focus around curriculum, assessment, visitors, ways of enhancing RE. So collective worship isn't something that's frequently talked about. So bringing that, it is something that as a school, we have put some work into, and have recently created a school prayer and things and that, and communicate to parents about that and staff. But I would imagine that it's not something on the higher priorities of RE leads. So
Yeah.
a relaunch perhaps is due.
Yeah, and obviously there is, we did produce as well as a sort of self-evaluation toolkit at the time as well. It is the sort of bit of RE education which is a statutory requirement, and I know it's quite controversial, you know, sort of in many schools, but it is the bit, you know, sort of that formally you have to write to school to say that you're not going to be participating in collective worship. It is one of those things that is part, as I say, of that original Education Act. So yeah, it's just really whether we either look at it and take dates off it and things like that, but I think it's important that SACRE reminds the school community that it's there.
Okay, so there's two questions, isn't there? There's one, do we make a song and dance about it and relaunch it, or even just relaunch it? And the other one is, does it need updating? Diane, you sort of put your hand up and then put it down. You got anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say something about should it not reflect the change in RE as being a religion and worldviews, but I'm very aware that it's not RE. That point has to be made. Collective worship isn't RE.
Isn't RE, no.
And
Thanks.
schools need to be aware of that as well, because there can be a confusion.
Yeah, they can. That's right. Yeah, and I think you know, just getting something out there about the status of collective worship is probably one of the things that I was thinking about. The other thing was using it as an opportunity to showcase best practice in terms of collective worship as well, where, you know, where we've got case studies or examples of what makes good collective worship, because there are lots of schools in York who do this really well.
Okay, Ben, you were next, and then I've seen you, Sue.
Yeah, I mean, Maxine has largely made my point. I think this is a work of genius, given that the law is an ass in this area, and it's clearly contradictory, and it does a great job at squaring the circle of broad Christian worship and inclusive and not about Christianity. It was bizarre. So actually, I think this is good guidance, and it's worth referring people back to it. But I do think, yeah, if we could give a page of examples of good practice, that's about the only thing that we could add to it.
And for the millions of people watching at home, I apologise for Ben's language there. And then we're going to move on. It could have been. We're going to move on to Sue. Stop saying.
Just reinforcing that message, really, that collective worship and RE are completely separate. In certainly in a lot of primary schools, there is a collective worship lead who may well and is usually separate to the RE lead. So, you know, the RE leads will often not be responsible for any part of the collective worship that goes on in school.
Okay. Having read through this document, I personally found it quite illuminating, but I think, yeah, it does. I think there's obviously the simple things like the dates. I also think, yes, that reflection of what is RE and what is collective worship. I think there needs to potentially just be a paragraph in there that's stronger on that. And I recognise Diane's point about it's no longer RE, it's RE and worldviews. And I think that actually helps in this situation. And then I really like the idea of a few examples of good practice, because I agree. It's an interesting document that sort of tries to address many things that are quite contradictory in 2024, I feel. But it is where we are. So let's answer that question and then we'll move on to the how do we launch it. So how do we communicate with schools to get examples of what they're doing in good practice? I think, for example, when we were at St. Oswald's, we saw a particularly good example of collective worship. And so I know, for example, that they're doing good things, St. Oswald's, or certainly in my opinion. But then there will be other examples as well. We might want to point to, and it might be a question for RE leads in primary schools.
Yeah, particularly those in non-faith schools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to sort of say, what are you doing in collective worship that makes things tick? I think that'd be really, really valuable. So Andy, there's another question for you there. Do you think that that's something you could?
So just reflecting, I would imagine in many cases that we're absolutely right, and that it's likely someone more in senior leadership team who's responsible for collective worship, and it might be that the RE teacher is subsequently involved, and certainly I worked alongside the head teacher to bring our collective worship to date. With regards to getting this republished and sort of getting teacher views and things like that, it may be worth going to the heads initially and then sort of saying, you know, I know you're very busy, but could you give us a picture and where you're up to, what your current positions are? Would you be happy to share that good practice that we can then put in there? And actually, because they're the people who will probably have this in the back of their mind as part of their assemblies and things like that.
You're absolutely right, Andy. It is a statutory requirement for head teachers to lead on this. Yeah.
Excellent. And I think that you're right, that those head teachers will devolve that down to other members. I mean, even myself, I've led collective worship before, and everyone survived. I was very impressed. There was a candle and everything. But yes, anyway, okay, so then we get that feedback, and then I think in terms of relaunching this, I think that is something where we could do a little bit of online training with, you know, we could advertise it to the relevant leads within the schools and the people we've talked to about what their good examples were, for example. And that could be this document is something that was last published in 2017. We're relaunching it. We're just opening up a discussion about what collective worship is in York. Does that seem a reasonable way to go once we're ready? There's no, you know, pressure to run away and do it straight away, but
no, it just shows it's being kept under, you know, sort of reasonable review, which requirements to do. Yeah.
As well, just thinking on a personal recent account, when we were looking into collective worship, we went to the DFE and it brings you to sort of a scanned PDF of the actual 1994 thing, and it looks very, they've scanned it out of a book and put it onto the DFE webpage. So having this forward and present again and easily available to sort of supplement that feels really, really useful. It may be also beneficial as when we relaunched as part of our Broadly Christian, we created a very personal school prayer, which was to our values and things. A parent got in touch and said, can you show us where this links to? And so ultimately what we had then was a link to that old document. It may be beneficial if this is made available online, and those links were shared. So next time a parent gets in touch, we can say, this is the DFE, this is the York SACRE as well. So they've got access to that.
Yeah, and it is, I think it is useful to do that, because obviously increasingly some parents are worried about these aspects.
Yeah, and I think that is the case. My last question on this would be, Diane, obviously with your initial teacher education sort of hat on, I mean, as I said, I think any teacher and all teachers should at some point lead a collective worship. I wonder if there's something in here to maybe do a little bit of training with those trainee teachers as well. Any thoughts?
I do touch on it on some of the training that I do, but mainly to make the point that RE and collective worship are two different things. And really it's a different part of the training.
Yeah.
It's more the pastoral side of training rather than specifically RE. I think basically what we're trying to say is that RE is distancing itself from collective worship.
Sounds like it, Diane, yeah.
So that's, well, we'll add that into the document and see if that. But no, that's my point was that, you know, so it clearly does happen at some point in the initial teacher training process. If we're getting a lot of new teachers through York, why not at least show them what a document is, if possible, you know, we could send it to them, or we could invite them to, you know, listen to any launch, for example. That might be an option. I'm just sort of thinking ahead, but we might, well, if we're doing something, get it out as much as we can.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it can be something to put on the RE hubs.
Yeah,
exactly. That's
Yeah.
another good idea.
As an event. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, anybody else for anything else on that item? Okay, Ben is rapidly leaving. No, it's absolutely fine. So we've got correspondence, complaints and determinations. Any?
None received.
Penny's already provided us with any other business. Anybody got any other business? Councillor Knight.
So just, I was due to feedback on the newsletter.
Yes.
Newsletter. So just to say, I've had a bit of an IT fail, and I'd done a lovely mock-up and I've lost it. I can't find the file anywhere. So pride goes before fall, doesn't it? I was terribly pleased with myself. I've prepared a summary of what I think we would want to put in it, what we want to see in it, the sort of things we'd look at. Interestingly, a lot of what we've discussed is covered. So things like CPD, training opportunities, festival calendar themes, youth voice, competitions, SACRE meeting dates. That might be an opportunity as well to communicate vacancies and things like that. So what I'll do is I will circulate this. I will rework a mock-up, and I'm very conscious that we said that I would include the interfaith team and get feedback from them as well. So I'll send it out to everybody, and any feedback would be welcome. Forgive me if it comes across a little bit corporate, but that sort of just habit of doing comms and newsletters. And for my sins, I am, and the sort of for the delay in coming up with this, I am happy to take on editing this on a termly basis, should you wish me to do so. So I enjoy doing things like that. So
thank you.
But I'll circulate it, and then I can get your feedback. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Knight. Okay, so there's been a couple of bits of homework for everyone tonight. One is feedback on that leaflet. One was writing your sentence or two for your website, and one was myself and Ben and Maxine to talk about the development plan, and the final one was myself, Ben, Penny and Diane, I believe, to talk about potential of doing a lecture or something like that. Andy?
Sorry, were we also to look at the survey as well?
Yes, well done, good spot. That was the last one. So the survey that Maxine is going to put some words together, provide us with the previous survey. She'll email that round, and if people can get back to her as quick as possible, that will be very helpful. And Andy, you've got your own separate job list for talking to members of the Maintain group, and I think we've covered all that, haven't we? Excellent. The people who ran away from the meeting were Maxine and Ben. They did say they were going at 7 o'clock, so I was trying to get us to the end before there, but there we go. Anything else? Okay. The next meeting is on the 27th of January. Thanks for those folks joining us online. Thank you all. Let's close the meeting. Good night.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
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 Good night.